Hello and welcome to ERUPT, the home for how businesses can scale and transform. Throughout this podcast, we aim to inspire and educate to help you and your business thrive. Across the course of our episodes, we'll be interviewing industry leaders to uncover some of the challenges across the world of work. We aim to give an insight into some of the fastest growing organisations across HR and technology. Please follow us on our journey to ERUPT and elevate your business. This episode is from our ERUPT Learning and Talent Conference, which was hosted in September 2022. The conference focused on topics from developing emotional intelligence to creating a transparent future career. This particular session was around multi-modal leadership, developing emotional intelligence. Our panel included Andrew Fox, who is Head of HR UK and International at VTB Capital, and Debaraj Dutta, who is the Director of Leadership Development at Novanta Inc. Our panel discussed their idea of what a leader is, and how leadership is a skill that can exist within everyone. Our panellists believe that people are expecting more from a leader than ever before, and that situational leadership has now become very important. I hope you enjoy, and make sure you check out the ERUPT website for further content and for all videos on demand.
My name is Debaraj Dutta. I joined Novanta in August, so it's literally quite early stages, and I joined them as the Director of Leadership Development. Quite an exciting work that's happening at Novanta right now on this space, and I'm really happy to join all of you this morning. Thank you.
Fantastic. We're lucky to have you, Debaraj.
Right, Magnus, I'll go next. I seem to recall you from last year's conference.
Yes,
but
for sure.
I wondered if that was my imagination or not. But it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Hi everybody. At the moment, I'm in a very interesting position working for VTB. No secret that because of the war on Ukraine, we've been placed under sanctions, and so we are busy winding the company down. And winding a bank down to ultimate closure is something that has not been done many times before, certainly in this country. And so we're finding it really interesting because there's no playbook, there's no rule book, there's no one you can speak to who's done it before, and not even our regulators or the authorities know exactly what's to follow or what's next. It really brings to the forefront the important types of leadership skills you need when you're facing a genuine and real crisis. So looking forward to our discussion.
And we'll be talking about multi-modal leadership, developing emotional intelligence. And obviously with the point you've just made there, I imagine you're having to tap into that skill set a lot more than you ever have had to before, I imagine. But I'll kick off with the first question. We'll start with you, Debaraj. What is the difference between a leader and leadership?
Yeah, for me, these two terms are really key, and I think it needs to be kind of clarified for a general understanding, because they can be very misunderstood most of the time. And in my career, what I've found is people have used both these terms interchangeably to kind of mean the same thing. It feels like leadership is the same as being a leader. So for me, I take the path of where leader is that identity. It's that particular person that adds value to who they are. And leadership in general is the skill that people hone and they have. So to be a good leader, everybody has that in them, but then only some people can tap into it or consciously understand that they are a leader and believe in it and have the confidence. And then as they go further, they become, the more conscious they become, the more self-aware they become, they really get onto the journey of building their leadership skills. And that's the best way I would define, so the leader is the identity, as in who we are and how I feel and what I'm capable of doing, versus leadership being the skill that I need to continuously develop and evolve in my journey of being that good leader.
Fantastic. And Andrew, can you also answer the same question? I think it's a really powerful question, certainly in the context of leadership.
Sure. I wouldn't disagree with anything Debaraj just said, although I'll confess that sometimes I'm guilty of doing exactly what he said, and that is using the term interchangeably. So I'll just put my hand up and confess to that. I think what's really important for me, and what I've noticed through my career, is that it's exactly the point Debaraj just made, is the series of skills and abilities that you grow and develop over time that turns you into a better leader as you acquire more leadership skills. And I think for me, particularly at the moment, more so, and I know we always say this, but more so than in our history, leaders and understanding leadership is really critical, because they have such a disproportionate impact on organizations, particularly in times where there is change, disruption, or instability. And I can't think of a time over the last couple of years now and into the next couple of years, particularly in the UK as we enter a recession, which I think might be partially a global recession, whilst we've got war taking place in Europe. The political landscape is in turmoil. You could look at any aspect of our daily and organizational lives, and you see this rapid, unknown, unfamiliar change. Leaders, therefore, have a more important role than usual to play in helping organizations adapt and cope with situations that they're going to find themselves in, which are completely unfamiliar.
Mm. And that actually lends itself quite well to the next question, and that question is just essentially around what are people expecting from a leader now, with some of the major challenges and concerns that are going on essentially, and certainly some of the major challenges as a leader in the modern workplace.
Debaraj, do you want to have a stab first, or do you want me to go?
Go for it, Andrew.
Yeah. Okay. I think this question starts to get at the nub of what I think is going on at the moment in the field of leadership. And we talk about multimodal leadership, but we mustn't forget that there are very few new things in the world. And years ago, when I was at university, we used to call it situational leadership. And there was a model that suggested that leaders had to react and respond differently depending on the situation they were in. But the model only conceived of a very limited number of situations, if we're honest. Now what we find ourselves in is in a situation where literally just about every challenge that we encounter is unknown, is new, is unique, and is novel. And so I think what people are looking for from leaders today is, first of all, that leaders can act differently depending on the situation and are fluid and adaptable in their style. There will be instances where a leader has to take charge and give strong direction, but equally there will be times where the leader has to dial the ego down, admit that they might not know the answer, and harness the collective problem-solving skills of the entire team or group. And I think that historically, leaders decades ago found that really difficult, because it's almost, as a leader, you have to seed power into the group and allow the group to jointly problem solve. Remember, the minute the leader says, I have the answer, or I think it's this, or I think I've seen this before, or I think we should go in this direction, they automatically shut down a level of debate, which I think increasingly is becoming really, really important. So for me, I think the situation will vary, and so therefore the expectation of the leader will vary. But I think that the primary thing is, and then I'll hand over to Debaraj, is really for the leader to be able to acknowledge and not feel vulnerable when they say they may not know the answer, and they harness the collective power of the group to try and jointly come up with a solution, a problem, or some creative element that they're looking for. So I think when we talk about multimodal leadership, it's about that adaptability, that recognition of the fluidity of the situation, and therefore the fluidity of leadership that's required. And I think a part of that for me certainly is the leader being able to step back and bring the group in to the problem-solving process and not shut that down by saying, I think we should do the following. Debaraj, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I want to go a bit deeper on that. And for me, I see the position of a leader and the role of a leader changing so much that it's literally shifting away from some form of traditional leading or leadership concepts to this whole modern leadership concept. And the best way I can explain that, to Andrew's point, leadership will demand that level of agility, that they can quickly, kind of navigate the situation and work through it. And of course, they are leaders because they lead people. So that's why the term I want to use is what we need in leaders is to be a human leader. And I think that human quality is very essential for me. And to the point where when this change is happening, I literally see it as if traditional leadership was, imagine if it was like changing a aeroplane's engine while it was, on ground. Now, I would say with the uncertainty that our leaders face, the role is so crucial that they will have to learn to change that engine while the flight's on flight. So it's that kind of resilience, it's that kind of and that's why I want to go a bit deeper on this human quality, beyond what Andrew said, is I would rather leaders be vulnerable than not, because I think that's a very key human quality, to be. And the way I see this leader's role growing is about leading people. But when you say leading people, again, what they are leading is not the bodies, it's the minds of people. So I want to bring that to that level of mindset, that the best successful leaders as we go on and as we move forward is going to be the ones who are human enough, who are like their people, because people need to connect with them to that level, and who have vulnerability, but who know how to position that vulnerability, in a way that brings meaningful change with people. And I think with this, when the leaders bring these qualities, they will connect with other humans around them, and the best thing I see change is people's minds and mindset, because I think that's when people, every individual, will kind of step up to where they are, to where they need to be, to collectively kind of bring change and shape into this change itself. So yeah, I'll summarize that as that human leader.
Perfect. And sticking with you, Debaraj, given the answers that both of you have just given, and certainly the human side of things, how have you seen the role of emotional intelligence kind of rise back from the ashes? And also, more importantly, can AI be taught, or is it a natural trait?
That's fantastic. And I love this topic around emotional intelligence. And I think I learned even more when I became a certified practitioner of some of the psychometric tools that I've been using over 8 years now. And emotional intelligence is so crucial and so key, mainly for leaders, is because of that human leaders' qualities that I mentioned earlier. And this is one quality which starts with, I'm sure, people who have joined this call would have heard and known enough about emotional intelligence. But just to summarize it, it's an inside out process for me. It never starts with a book of standards to say, if you do these 5 things, that's it, you're done. You're winning with emotional intelligence. It's not that. The first step of emotional intelligence, in fact, the first 2 steps, starts with you knowing your emotions, and then you being able to manage your emotions to get the best outcome. Because only then are you able to tap into understanding others' emotions and being empathic mainly, and then build relationship with people, because that's where the full circle comes together. So for me, emotional intelligence is so crucial in a leader's position to kind of build that success. And can it be taught? I'm divided there, and I'll tell you why. Because emotional intelligence alone is not enough. Yeah, we need something with it. It's literally like you need a fuel to it, or a catalyst to move on. And that's why the 4 things that I basically practice is, with emotional intelligence, you need a bit of behavioral science, you need a bit of personality dynamics, and then you need to tap into people's high potential to bring them. So yes, emotional intelligence, it's a trait rather than a state. What that means is, a trait is something that you constantly kind of repeat over time. It's not something you just do today and not tomorrow. So it's a part of us there, present. So just to give you another simple example, if you're optimistic, you are optimistic. You can never dial it down to be a pessimistic, So I think to that level, can it be taught? You can teach somebody about becoming aware of their emotional intelligence, but we cannot teach somebody to change what their emotional patterns are to become somebody else. So it's not a kind of a physical transformation, but it'll aid the behavioral element to say, okay, now I know better about my emotions. I know how I might or might not respond in these situations. And therefore, I can learn how to behave differently to get a successful outcome in different situations. So I hope I've explained that all right.
Andrew, do you have? I'm sure you have something to add to that.
Yeah, I do. And it's one of the things when you get old and grey, like I do, you see these things and you become aware of history, and the history around leadership and EQ, I think, goes back many years. And I think one of the reasons why we haven't seen the shift that we could have and that we now need to is because I think that we were trying to teach leaders EQ without any vulnerability or empathy or humanness. So we said it's just a simple skill. We'll just teach you to have a higher care for, or to show a higher care for the people who work in your team. And I think it's had very mixed results. And I think we definitely haven't seen the results that we should have. And that is because, first of all, I agree with what Debaraj said. It's an inside-out process. It has to start with self, because it has to start with a degree of humanness, and it has to start with a degree of vulnerability. And if you aren't prepared to be a human being, and if you aren't prepared to show vulnerability in all parts of your life, including if you have a role as a leader or you have a role as a member of a team, then I think that you're going to struggle to adapt. You're not going to have the levels of EQ necessary, I think, for the modern workplace, because you will not be adaptive and responsive enough to the challenges which you're going to face. And these challenges are going to be challenges that no one else has potentially encountered before. And I've seen that a number of times, whether it's been where I am now, where we're facing ultimate sanctions, or previously when we've been acquired, or in other instances where we've had a monitor placed inside the organization with an existential threat of closure if we fail to meet certain regulatory requirements. These are all unknown situations where the leader gets thrown into, and their ability to cope with that is really dependent, to some extent at least, on their ability to put up their hand and say, I know I'm the boss, but you know what? I don't know right now. And so together we need to figure this thing out. Now, for us, that might seem quite natural, but sort of even 2 decades ago, for a leader to stand up in front of their team and say, I'm not sure what the answer is, and I need us to figure it out together, would have been almost unheard of, I imagine, because that leader would not have wanted to demonstrate that level of vulnerability. And in fact, they thought that their role was to have the answer for everyone, for everybody, on everything. And I think our new picture of leadership is emerging where that's not the case. Actually, you don't have to know all the answers all the time. What you have to be able to do is to get the best input out of everybody working together, such that that creates the correct answer rather than have it yourself. And that's a big distinction for me. And I think that's part of leadership that's emerging now. And we're seeing how powerful it can be. I've seen for myself firsthand how powerful it can be when you have a leader that is able just to stand up and say, I'm not sure what the answer is, and I need everyone to climb into this thing together with me and figure it out, as opposed to the leader that says, don't worry, I've got the answer, and this is what you're going to do. Because that last leader is bound to lead you down a rabbit hole and land you up in a place where you really don't want to be.
Fantastic. That's some great insight from the two of you. And we've got some really good engagement in the chat section as well. So that's good. And just going a bit deeper into the bit you just mentioned, certainly around vulnerability and the team being aware that you don't necessarily know the answer. Which leadership hats do you think we will never need to put on again, so to speak, Debaraj?
Yeah, I think the leadership hats that we don't need to put on is what your question is, right, Magnus?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Not to put on the hats where, you cannot think something new. I mean, if there is a tried and tested method and if it worked constantly, I would say, throw those hats out, become more curious and probably even create a bit of a hypothetical situation, as in question things like thinking how to think. And I'm really passionate when I read great authors, and one that stands out on this particular area for me is Adam Grant. And he talks about thinking again, and for me what that taught me, that something relates to also multimodal leadership as well, out of the four pillars, one particular one being collaboration, right? And for me, when leaders kind of throw this hat off to say, okay, something's tried and tested and it'll work. So what I'm trying to say is throw away the hat that taught you or that you felt comfortable to be and stay fixed-minded. Yeah. And maybe put on the hat which helps you to become growth-minded, to say, how can I constantly learn? How can I fail fast, learn fast? And I think this particular hat is going to give them that ability to learn, to unlearn, and then to relearn. And I think that goes back to what we are discussing about the vulnerability, about the agility, and I think that particular hat's going to be very important.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I think that's actually very well put. If I had to choose a hat, I think it's aligned. It's a similar hat, must have a similar hat designer, but it's the hat that says, I'm right because I'm the boss. And I think, in days gone by, that often was the case. And your sort of manufacturing type organizations had a command and control type leadership structure, and perhaps you needed that. And perhaps we still have industries where you have elements of that. I think, for example, still perhaps in resource-based industries. But I think in the modern organization, in the service or knowledge-based industries, and certainly, obviously, in the tech-based industries, just to name a few, that I'm right because I'm the boss is, I think, your guaranteed ticket to failure. Because I think the truth is that with the pace of change that we are seeing, if you're the boss and you think you're right by virtue of the fact simply that you're the boss, you're missing out and you close down all the ideas that everybody in your team is going to have. And therefore, I think you're destined to fail because you have not harnessed the collective wisdom that you have at your disposal. So for me, it is about really the reason why for me the EQ, the humanness, the empathy are such important qualities now is because they allow us to really harness the collective sort of intellectual horsepower of the group, whereas old modes of leadership tend to shut them down. New modes of leadership open them up and free people to contribute and to think. And I think that's what's going to make the difference around success and failure for the future. It's that ability to remain open and not close debates down and not be closed yourself in your own thought process.
Okay. And with the new ways of working, if you like, and most businesses are working a hybrid model at the moment. So Debaraj, what traits as a leader do you think you need to bring into the office, and what traits do you need to bring into your working from home office?
Quite a lot of qualities. And again, I think I connect to all the four things that's under multimodal leadership. So there is collaboration, there is innovation, there is, acculturation, and there is dedication, right? And if we are just kind of zooming into just those four things, but what do we need to bring in when our environment change? So the way, again, it's about preparedness. It's about planning. It's about a bit of planning and thinking. And to put it in an example, so for example, collaboration used to just mean probably collaboration, in everybody's uniqueness, but it was mostly a very general process of where we are kind of with other people and we are sharing something, we are creating something together. But I think what I saw change drastically is when COVID hit and we went into lockdown, is it challenged some teams who were not used to that, because now the home working literally felt like the question was in the mind to say, can I collaborate in this environment? So the environment's really key. And what I found was that, if you just take the example of collaboration itself, it's not about I can collaborate better face to face and I can't collaborate when I'm in-house. Yeah. It's about knowing what do we collaborate about. So I like to go to that baseline, to that layer, to basically question about what does collaboration mean when we are in person versus when we are on our own, in-house office. And I think what I'm trying to say from that is about being sensitive to the environment that people are in, and it's still giving possibility for these kind of things to happen, because all of this will impact innovation or how we do our work, to the simple fact that if there is a leader who is spending more face time with their people when they're in office, now instantly when the people are working from home, it's not that the leader can disconnect. I think it's the leader being more conscious about how am I going to now stay connected with my people, which might mean to do those micro nano check-ins to say, what's going on? How are you? Are you clear about what I need to deliver? So I think it's that balance rather than, has something to be switched off or switched on completely.
Yeah. I would just add, and I know Magnus, you're a time master, and you have to control our time, and I think we might be running short. And I agree. I think during the pandemic, people predicted the end of the workplace, and I think we've realized now that that's not going to be true, and that we'll have some people who are in the office, and then we'll have some people who are working remotely. I agree that the issue of collaboration wherever you are remains really critical. And so one of the leadership skills I think we're going to have to develop is how to collaborate when you have a dispersed team. In the so-called old days, which is easy, you got in a room and you got a whiteboard or a flip chart, and then you would draw and you would scribble, you would take notes, and maybe you would have someone type them up, and then you would share them with the team, and then so that would create a process of collaboration with a group of people. And obviously now that doesn't work, because even if you're using a whiteboard in the team, unless you've got the right technology, the people who are on the video won't be able to read what's on the whiteboard. And they also won't be able to get up from their chair and put a post-it on the board. So it's around having the right technology and the right skill set to make sure that this collaboration issue, which Debaraj I think is talking about, which I still think is completely critical to the emerging world of work, but we now just have to be better at bringing in people who are not in the room, because otherwise we run the risk of creating a two-tiered workforce, right? Those who are in the office more often and those who are in the office less often. And that is a real risk. And I would urge everybody, who's looking at teams, who's looking at hybrid working, looking at policies around hybrid working, looking at the investment in technology to enable hybrid working, to be really conscious that we don't end up with a sort of two-tier workforce where we have the people who come into the office on a regular basis, have one experience and level of engagement with the organization, and those who work from home have a different experience of the organization and relationship with the organization and with the manager. And I think that is an emerging skill set. It's an emerging set of technologies. And I, for one, can't wait to see how we get better at all of that to create a seamless environment where it literally, genuinely doesn't matter where you are, but your ability to contribute, to collaborate, and your relationship with the team and the organization and engagement with those things is the same independent of where you are.
Fantastic. And as you rightly said, Andrew, I am the time master, unfortunately. I know everybody is really enjoying that discussion. We are wrapping up, but just before we go, 5 seconds each, if you can both just give me a nugget for people to take away.
Yeah, for me, I think it's understanding the role itself of that difference between leader and leadership is the skill. And one more thing I want to add is with the vulnerability, I think trust is going to be the core of everything as modern leadership evolves. As leaders understand that they have the power, they have the privileges, they have the resources. Now the question is, how can they use that to build that trust, and how can they enable people around them? Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I would just add in very quickly, I think we'd be best served if we almost, and I say almost, but not entirely, took the old rule book about how we used to do everything and almost threw it out the window and reimagined a new model of leadership with new capabilities, a new workplace and how we engage. I think the point about trust that's just been mentioned is also critical. And I think that we're at the brink of something really exciting, because we're at the brink of creating a completely different, completely new organization type, where people's level of engagement and contribution and the way that blends and melds with the rest of their life is going to change completely. So it's been a pleasure to talk to everyone today. It seems like time flew by. And Magnus, thanks as always for your facilitation, and to the audience for being with us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Debaraj.
This podcast was brought to you by ERUPT at Annapurna, the #1 platform that case studies the organisations that not only disrupt, but those that erupt. Please visit our new Go ERUPT website for more content and log in to watch the full episodes from the conference. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure to watch out for the next.